In this lesson, I'm going to use warping to change the tone of the vocal chop in Simpler. And then after that, we're going to check out the fade in, fade out envelope on Simpler. This is an area you should definitely be familiar with. All right, in terms of giving your vocal chops character, turning on warp and using warp modes is actually a really awesome thing to do. So I'm going to turn on warp here, and this is going to eventually alter the character of the vocal chop quite a bit. Although warping is mostly used as a timing correction thing, essentially, to keep things locked to your BPM, it can also be used to alter the tone, character, and vibe of your samples in really cool ways. And so all of these warp modes are going to give you slightly different results, sometimes drastically different. But the one I often use is called Complex Pro. This one uses the most CPU, but most computers nowadays I find handle it just fine. And you can get some really interesting results by messing around with the envelope amount right here. So I'm going to turn off warp real quick, and let's just see what happens.
Lifting.
So no warping.
Lifting. 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 Lifting.
So yeah, I like it somewhere around here in the 50s range, around 56.
Lifting. 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 Lifting.
It's a little robotic and unnatural, but I actually dig that for this tune at the moment. Let's hear it in context real quick. So that's how you can change the character of your vocal sample by turning on warp in Simpler. Now I want to massage the attack of our samples in Simpler with fade in. In slicing mode, there's no ADSR envelope like in Classic or what you'd get in like a lot of synthesizers, for example. So essentially, fade in and fade out are kind of the equivalent of attack and release. Fade in is how long it takes for the slice to reach its peak volume. And then in gate mode, which we covered in a previous episode, fade out is how long it takes for each sample to reach silence after the MIDI note stops. So when you're using slicing mode or one-shot mode, for that matter, always keep fade in and fade out in mind. So right now, fade in is basically ridiculously fast at 0.1 milliseconds. Let me solo it so you can hear it. So it sounds okay, but it's a bit choppy. I don't love it. Watch what happens when I back off fade in just a tiny bit.
Lifting. 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 Lifting.
So it's still very fast at 10 milliseconds, but it's much smoother if we do a comparison.
Lifting. 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 Lifting.
So that sounds better to me. It's subtle, but definitely better. Now as for the fade out, it's fine just where it is. I'm not really hearing any problems with the end of the slices. So that's how you can use fade in to smooth out the attacks on your slices. So in this lesson, we turned on warp, and that gave the tone of the vocal chop a unique character. It's a bit robotic and unnatural, but it still works with the style of the song. Then we dialed back the fade in amount, making the slices a little bit less choppy and overall smoother.